"Your daughter is useless," shouted the drunken nobleman. The Duke stood up and said something that silenced everyone. "Prepare to meet Eleanor Ashford, a young woman from 1815 England, who teaches us, through her silent dignity and quiet courage, that true strength doesn't shout, it blossoms. This is a story about choices made in the shadows, about sacrifices no one witnesses, and about how hands that work with love can transform even the most barren winter into spring." In a time when a woman's worth was measured by her beauty and docility, Eleanor chose another path. Her hands, calloused by the earth and marked by compassion, wrote a story that defies being forgotten. Between ballrooms and abandoned conservatories, between the cruelty of society and the kindness of the forgotten, we will discover that true love isn't born from grand gestures, but from small choices repeated every day. Before we begin this journey to the heart of Regency, England, we want to know, where are you joining us from right now? What corner of the world is about to meet Eleanor? Let us know in the comments. We love knowing our story crosses borders and oceans. And don't forget, if this story touches your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Every gesture of support allows us to continue bringing narratives that honor human dignity and celebrate the silent heroes of history. Now take a deep breath. Smell the imaginary aroma of freshly fallen snow and winter roses. Let's go together. Year, winter of 1815-1816. Location, London and Derbyshire, England. In the aftermath of the Battle of Waterloo, while the nation celebrated victory, in the silent drawing rooms of English high society, other battles, invisible but no less devastating, were waged every day. Snow fell on Ashford Hall, like a silent blessing on a noisy sin. Inside, the ballroom buzzed with the heat of 200 bodies adorned in silks and brocades, jewels capturing the light of 1,000 candles like tiny trapped suns. The air smelled of expensive French perfumes, discreetly masked sweat, and that peculiar fragrance of ambition emanating from mothers with marriageable daughters. Eleanor Ashford stood motionless near the doors of the abandoned conservatory, her blue dress, simple, unembroidered, lacking the sparkle that fashion demanded, making her almost invisible among the marble columns. She was 22, a dangerous age for an unmarried woman of high society. It wasn't that she lacked beauty. Her amber-colored eyes held depths that frightened young men accustomed to the superficiality of ballroom conversations. Her hands, however, betrayed her. They were not the aristocratic hands of slender fingers and porcelain skin. They were hands that knew work, that held secrets in the firmness with which they closed. She observed the crowd with the distance of someone watching a play in which she was not a part. Lady Worthington displayed her daughter like a trophy. The young woman's pink dress had cost more than the annual income of 3 tenant families. Lord Ashford, her father, circulated among the guests with that wide smile and glazed eyes Eleanor knew so well, the smile that preceded storms, soaked in brandy and despair. "Alone again, Miss Ashford?" The voice was deep, velvety like expensive cigar smoke. Eleanor turned and met grey eyes that seemed to have witnessed storms on distant seas. William Pembroke, Duke of Ravensworth, was 34 and had a fine scar crossing his left temple. A memento of Waterloo, the whispers said. Tall with broad shoulders that his impeccably cut coat couldn't completely tame, there was something indomitable about him that social polish couldn't reach. "Solitude is sometimes the most honest company in drawing rooms like this, Your Grace," Eleanor replied, keeping her voice serene, her eyes on the dark conservatory through the fogged glass doors. The Duke followed her gaze. Through the panes, dirty with neglect, one could discern ghostly shapes of dead plants, broken pots, the iron structure of the partially collapsed roof. "How long has it been abandoned?" 5 years, the answer came softly, but it carried the weight of each winter past. Since Mother passed away, she especially loved the hellebores, the snowdrops, the flowers that defy winter. She said they were the bravest, because they bloomed when everyone expected only cold. William noticed something in her voice. It wasn't self-pity, but a longing that had transformed into something else. Acceptance, perhaps, or that quiet strength that comes from carrying alone a weight that should be shared. "And the witch hazel?" he asked, surprising her. "I saw some remnants on the east structure. Its flowers perfumed the air even in the ice." Eleanor turned completely to him then, and for the first time that night, something close to a smile touched her lips. "You know winter plants, Your Grace? I spent 2 winters in Russia as a diplomat before the war," William explained. "I learned that the most memorable beauty is that which blooms against all expectations." They talked for 20 minutes that seemed suspended in time. Eleanor described each plant her mother had cultivated, the layout of the beds, the steam heating system that maintained a constant temperature. William listened with genuine attention, asking questions that revealed real knowledge, not mere politeness. It was when they returned to the ballroom that the world collapsed. "There you are!" The Earl of Ashford's voice cut through the nearby conversations like a razor. He swayed slightly, his hand gripping the arm of Lord Silverton, a man with small eyes and fingers adorned with excessive rings. Hiding in the corners as always useless. The room began to silence in waves, the cruel curiosity of society scenting scandal like hounds scenting blood. "Father, please," Eleanor murmured, but there was steel beneath the softness. "Don't please me," the Earl pointed with a theatrical gesture. 22 years old and can't even dress properly to attract a suitor. No grace, no charm, not a single worthwhile ornament. Your mother would be ashamed. The blow was calculated to hurt where it pained the most. Eleanor paled, but remained erect, her chin high. Her fingers, however, trembled slightly. "Regrettable indeed," Silverton hissed, his eyes raking over Eleanor with an appreciation that made the skin crawl. "Although I am a man of eclectic tastes, perhaps a deal could be—" "I want her." The 3 words fell upon the ballroom like stones in a tranquil lake. The silence became absolute. William Pembroke had taken a step forward, placing himself slightly between Eleanor and the 2 men, his posture relaxed, but his voice carrying an authority that required no shouting. "Pardon, Ravensworth." The Earl blinked, confused. "Miss Eleanor Ashford," William repeated with crystalline clarity. "I want her. Tonight." What remained of conversation died completely. Eleanor felt the blood pounding in her temples, but something stronger than fear or shame kept her motionless. Curiosity. The Duke of Ravensworth was not known for impulsiveness. Men like him did not make scandalous declarations in packed ballrooms without reason. "Are you drunk, Your Grace?" The Earl tried to laugh, but the sound came out strangled. "Perfectly sober, Ashford." William maintained a cordial, almost bored tone, as if discussing the weather. "I propose honourable protection under the guardianship of my aunt, Lady Beatrice Pembroke. Miss Ashford will reside at Ravensworth Manor in Derbyshire, where she will be treated with the dignity her station requires." "This is irregular," Silverton intervened, but his eyes gleamed with calculation. "Very irregular. Unless your intentions are—" "My intentions, Silverton, are my own affair." William finally turned to the moneylender, and there was pure ice in that grey gaze. "But since you mentioned business, perhaps we should discuss your vowels, shouldn't we? I understand you hold a considerable amount of Ashford's paper at what rate again? 40% interest?" Silverton turned pale. The Earl staggered. William turned back to Eleanor then, and his voice softened. "Miss Ashford, this choice is yours. You may accept my protection," and here he emphasized the word, "or remain here. There will be no judgment from me, whatever your decision." Eleanor looked at her father, whose face had turned ashen. She looked at Silverton, whose fingers drummed nervously on his rings. She looked at the 200 pairs of eyes fixed on her, hungry for scandal, for others' misfortune. Then she looked at the Duke of Ravensworth, who waited with a patience she had never witnessed in any man. "I accept your offer, Your Grace." Her voice sounded firm. "With gratitude." A murmur rippled through the hall, like wind through a wheat field. "Lady Beatrice will arrive in an hour to escort you properly," William declared to the room at large, transforming potential scandal into propriety by the force of his social standing. "I suggest Miss Ashford prepare her belongings." As Eleanor crossed the room towards the stairs, the crowds parting like the sea before Moses, she heard the Earl mutter to Silverton, "The vowels. He knows about the vowels." "All your clubs, Ashford," Silverton hissed back. "Whites, Waitiers, £12,000. She was your last bargaining chip." Eleanor climbed the stairs without looking back. The carriage traversed the snow-covered Derbyshire landscape like a solitary ship on a frozen sea. Inside, Eleanor observed Lady Beatrice Pembroke with discreet curiosity. The Duke's aunt was 58, but she possessed that posture that transcended age, a straight back, sharp eyes, and a half-smile that suggested knowledge of secrets she chose not to share. "You must be confused, my dear," Lady Beatrice said finally, her voice carrying genuine kindness. "My nephew has never acted impulsively since his return from Waterloo. Tonight was unusual." "Why did he do it then?" Eleanor asked, her frankness born of exhaustion. "Because William sees injustices where others see only inconveniences." Lady Beatrice adjusted the blanket over her knees. "The war turned many men into brutes. It turned my nephew into someone who can no longer ignore unnecessary suffering. They arrived at Ravensworth Manor as dawn tinted the sky pearl grey. The estate rose against the snowy hills like something out of a fairy tale. Honey-coloured stone, delicate towers, and gardens that promised future glory even under the ice. Eleanor was given a suite in the east wing. The windows overlooked the frozen gardens, and beyond them a conservatory that looked like the forgotten twin of the one at Ashford Hall. For 3 days, she explored the vastness of Ravensworth. She avoided William, who respected the distance. She walked through the icy gardens, visited the stables, spoke shyly with the servants. At night she wrote letters to Margarethe, her older sister, who was married to a baronet in the north. Margarethe's reply arrived on the 4th day, along with an invitation to meet in the library at 11 o'clock. "Dear Eleanor, you did well. Father is lost in his cups and cards. You are not a bargaining chip. You always knew that. Trust your instinct. Ravensworth has the reputation of a fair man. Your sister, M." Eleanor folded the letter carefully, placed it near her heart and went down to the library. The Ravensworth library smelled of bound leather, beeswax, and that indefinable fragrance of accumulated knowledge. William waited near the fireplace, where the fire crackled low. He wasn't wearing a formal coat, just a shirt and waistcoat, the sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms marked by small scars. On the mahogany table, 3 books bound in worn leather. "Forgive my intrusion," William began without preamble. "While organizing your belongings, my servants found these books among your clothes. I recognized the handwriting as the same from our conversations about the conservatory." Eleanor approached slowly. She recognized the 3 volumes immediately. Her ledgers. 5 years of meticulous records. She felt the blush rise, but she did not lower her eyes. "You read them." "I read them," William confirmed, "and I understood a great deal." "Miss Ashford, Eleanor, you managed an entire estate in secret for 5 years." She nodded, her hands clasped in front of her. William opened the first book, dated 1811. March 1811. Sold sapphire brooch. Amount £23. Destination: medicine for the Miller family. Typhoid fever. 4 children. Dr. Morrison, London. His voice was soft, almost reverent. "You were 17. He opened the second. November 1814. Sold pearl necklace, 2nd strand. Amount £90. Destination: seeds, 3 families failed harvest. Repairs to 2 cottages, roofs. He raised his eyes. "I recognize the handwriting of the apothecary Whitmore from Derby. These receipts are authentic." He merely rested his hand on the cover of the 3rd book. "This one you kept hidden. It records the origin of the funds. Your mother's jewels." "Your entire dowry," Eleanor finally spoke, her voice controlled but carrying years of silent pain. "Someone had to do it, Your Grace. People do not survive on empty promises. While father gambled fortunes at White's and Waitier's, tenants starved. Children died of treatable illnesses. Roofs collapsed." She took a deep breath. "The jewels were my inheritance. I chose to use them for something that mattered." William closed the books slowly, with almost religious reverence. "You sacrificed your only means of future independence. Without a dowry, your chances of a suitable marriage evaporated," Eleanor completed. "Yes, but children lived. That seems a fair trade to me." The silence that followed was thick with mutual understanding. William approached the window, looking out at the frozen gardens at the conservatory beyond. "When I saw you in that abandoned conservatory, speaking of your mother's plants with knowledge that would rival botanists from Kew Gardens, when I heard your father humiliate you publicly," he turned, and his grey eyes shone in the firelight, "I realized I was in the presence of someone extraordinary. These books only confirm what I suspected. You are not a victim, Eleanor Ashford. You are the secret heroine of a war no one witnessed." Eleanor felt something in her chest shift, like ice cracking under an unexpected sun. January brought new snow and an unexpected proposal. "I want to restore the conservatory," William announced during breakfast in the smaller sitting room, where silver light streamed through the high windows. "And I would like you to supervise the project." Eleanor paused with her teacup halfway to her lips. "Me? Your botanical knowledge is superior to any gardener I have employed, and there is something symbolic in the act, don't you think? Restoring what was abandoned, making bloom what everyone presumed dead." Thus began a routine that would transform them both. Master glaziers came from Sheffield, their skilled hands replacing broken glass with new panes that caught the light even in the grey winter. Mr. Thornton, Ravensworth's head gardener with 40 years of service to the Pembroke family, worked alongside Eleanor with a respect that knew no hierarchies. "Your mother would be proud to teach you, miss," he commented one day, as they prepared soil enriched with compost. "There is a wisdom in the hands that doesn't come from books." From the village of Millbrook, Mrs. Davies brought cuttings she had preserved, a secret legacy from Lady Anne's conservatory that she had kept alive all those years. "Your son," Eleanor murmured, touching the small plants with reverence. "How is Thomas?" Mrs. Davies smiled, her eyes misting. "Strong and healthy, miss, thanks to you. That winter of 1814 when the fever—" She didn't finish, but briefly squeezed Eleanor's hand. "Some debts are not paid with coins." William appeared every day at dawn, not as a master supervising servants, but rolling up his sleeves, carrying earth, mending iron structures. The Waterloo scar was visible when he took off his coat, a silver line across his temple. One day, Eleanor touched it briefly, impulsively. "Does it hurt?" "Not anymore, but it reminds," William replied, not moving away from the touch. "War teaches that value rarely wears a uniform, Miss Ashford. Sometimes it wears a simple blue dress and hands calloused from saving forgotten tenants." They planted hellebores where the morning light would touch first, cyclamen for colour in the winter grey, primroses that would promise a future spring, and witch hazel, always witch hazel, whose sweet scent would defy the ice. They established an unspoken routine. They met in the conservatory at dawn. They shared tea from Chinese porcelain William had brought back from diplomatic missions. They talked about land management, crop rotation, the well-being of the tenants, but also about comfortable silences, about how working side by side dispenses with words. Lady Beatrice watched from afar, her half-smile becoming more frequent. The Ravensworth servants commented among themselves. They had never seen the Duke so light, as if 5 years' weight of war were slowly slipping from his shoulders. But beyond the walls of Ravensworth, in London, a storm was brewing. Margaret's first letter arrived in February, as the first hellebores bloomed in impossible colours, pure whites, delicate pinks, deep greens. "Dear sister, rumours are circulating in London. They say you fled after indiscretions, that you are in a compromised situation. Silverton is spreading malicious insinuations in the clubs. Father is furious. Be careful. M." The second letter came directly from the Earl, brought by express messenger. "Eleanor, return immediately. Your reputation is being destroyed. Your disobedience shames our family. I have a solution for the situation. Do not force me to extreme measures." William read both letters when Eleanor, pale but firm, brought them to the conservatory. "Silverton," he murmured, folding the papers carefully. "Gambling vowels are not his only tool. He makes usurious loans. 40% interest, Eleanor. £12,000 accumulated. Your father is desperate. And the solution," Eleanor said, her voice controlled, "would be a marriage between myself and Silverton. It would partially settle the debts." William became very still. "I will not allow it." "It is not your decision, Your Grace." "Then allow me to make it so." He turned to her, and there was something new in his eyes, something Eleanor couldn't name yet. "I can investigate the debts, redeem the pawned jewels. I have the resources. I can—" "No," Eleanor interrupted gently. "I do not accept charity, not even from you. But there is something I could accept. Anything. Employment. A fair wage for fair work. As an administrator, an agricultural consultant, something that allows me to repay you with dignity." William studied her for a long time, then nodded slowly. £100 annually as Ravensworth's agricultural consultant. A formal contract. "And we will redeem the jewels not as a gift, but as a salary advance." Eleanor extended her hand. William shook it, and the touch lingered 3 seconds longer than propriety dictated. But London was not finished. The third letter, from Margaret again, brought a personal revelation. "I faced similar pressure before my marriage. Father tried to sell me to the highest bidder. I fled north with Thomas, who courted me honestly. I offer you refuge if needed. But Eleanor, you found something beyond refuge there, didn't you? I recognize it between the lines. Don't let him go. Your loving sister." Eleanor replied that night, "Dear M, I found more than refuge. I found purpose. I found a partner who sees strength where others see fault. I found a home." E. February brought a blizzard that turned Derbyshire into an alien territory, absolute white under a black sky, wind howling like a wild creature through Ravensworth's chimneys. It was 10 at night when frantic pounding on the main door awoke the house. Mr. Thornton, still in gardening clothes under a heavy coat, was trembling with cold and urgency. "Thomas Davies, Your Grace," he gasped. "High fever, can't breathe right. His mother is asking for Miss Ashford." Eleanor was already coming down the stairs, Lady Beatrice behind her with a basket of medicines they always kept prepared. "The village is 3 miles away," William said, already putting on a heavy travelling coat. "The sleigh can make it through." "I'm going too," Eleanor declared, her tone allowing no argument. They crossed Derbyshire under the blizzard, like travellers in a ghost world. The sleigh glided over an unrecognizable landscape, the horses blowing steam, the bells on the harness playing a tune of urgency. William drove, Eleanor beside him under heavy fur blankets. Millbrook looked like a fairy tale village, cottages with snowy roofs, smoke rising from the chimneys in straight columns. The Davies cottage had lights in every window. Inside, the air was thick with steam and fear. Thomas Davies, 6 years old, burned with fever on a narrow bed. His skin had a greyish tone, each breath a visible effort. Eleanor did not hesitate. She knelt, touched the boy's forehead, examined his throat, listened to his breathing. "Pneumonia. We need to lower the fever and open his airways." Her voice was calm, firm, transformed by necessity. Hands that touched earth now touched a sick child with the same reverence. Eleanor prepared mustard poultices for his chest. She created a steam tent with eucalyptus to ease his breathing. She alternated cold compresses on his forehead with warm compresses on his feet. William did not back away. He rolled up his sleeves, fetched water from the well every 20 minutes, kept the fire at the exact temperature, held the child when coughing spasms shook him. Mrs. Davies wept silently in a corner of the cottage, a rosary in her hands. "Just like in 1814, she murmured. "But you were there then too, milady, our protecting lady." The hours stretched like taffy. Midnight, 1 in the morning, 2, 3. Eleanor and William worked in perfect silence, each anticipating the other's needs. When she needed a clean cloth, he already had it. When he needed fresh water, she already had the basin ready. At 4:40 in the morning, as the first pale light touched the windows, the fever broke. Thomas opened his eyes, grey as the winter but alive. "I'm thirsty." His voice was just a whisper, but it was life. Mrs. Davies collapsed in sobs of relief. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself a moment of silent gratitude. "She saved my Thomas in 1814, Mrs. Davies said to William, holding Eleanor's hands. "She paid for a London doctor, £15 she didn't have. She also helped the Millers when the typhoid fever struck in 1813, and Mrs. Wright when the childbirth went badly in 1815. She looked at Eleanor with an adoration that made Eleanor look away. "The whole village knows about the jewels, about everything she sacrificed. We call her our protecting lady." On the return journey, with the dawn painting the snow pink and gold, William held Eleanor's hand in the sleigh. They did not speak. They didn't need to. But something fundamental had changed in the space between them. March arrived with the promise of spring. Buds on the trees, snow melting into musical streams, daffodils daring to poke green from the soil. And the express post from London also arrived. The document was formal, sealed with red wax black ink in precise legal script. Charges against Eleanor Ann Ashford, presented by Lord Reginald Ashford, Earl of Ashford, County of Hampshire, before Magistrate Herbert Crane. Misappropriation of family property valued at £800, fraudulent administration of county finances, improper and dishonourable moral conduct, abandonment of filial duties. Eleanor read it with hands that did not tremble, but her face had drained of colour. "Silverton is the key witness," William said, having read over her shoulder. "They've rented the Millbrook Inn, brought a magistrate from London. The hearing is set for 2 days from now." "He's desperate," Eleanor murmured. "The debts must have worsened. Silverton must be pressuring him." "I will not permit a private hearing where you have no adequate defence," William declared, already writing instructions quickly. "I propose a public trial in the Ravensworth Chapel. I will summon witnesses. I will hire an impartial judge. Sir George Hampton of Nottinghamshire retired from the magistracy, impeccable reputation. You will have a proper defence." "Your Grace," Eleanor touched his arm, "promise me, regardless of the outcome, that you will not seek revenge against my father. He is weak, not malicious." William covered her hand with his. "I promise moderation, but justice, Eleanor. Justice is not revenge." 2 days turned into a whirlwind of preparation. William consulted the family lawyer in Derby. Lady Beatrice organised witnesses, tenants, servants, merchants. Eleanor spent the night reviewing all her records, preparing a 15-page written statement detailing every transaction from 5 years. On the morning of the trial, she dressed in discreet grey, her hair pinned up severely, her mother's pearls, newly redeemed at her neck like silent armour. She crossed the Ravensworth gardens toward the chapel, feeling the weight of every choice she had made over the last 5 years. William walked beside her in a dark formal uniform, the Waterloo scar visible and proud. "You are braver than any soldier I knew at Waterloo," he said quietly. "Courage is just fear that has said its prayers and moved forward," Eleanor replied. The Ravensworth chapel awaited them, filled with witnesses to the life Eleanor had lived in the shadows. It was time for the truth to come to light. The Ravensworth chapel smelled of old wood and beeswax candles. 60 people squeezed into the pews, residents of Millbrook, tenants from Ravensworth and Ashford, representatives of neighbouring noble families. Curiosity had drawn spectators, but something else too, the silent devotion of those Eleanor had helped. Sir George Hampton, a 67-year-old retired judge with impressive eyebrows and eyes that forgave no lies, presided from a raised chair near the altar. The Earl of Ashford occupied the front row, next to Lord Silverton. Ashford was visibly nervous, his fingers drumming on the pew. Silverton, however, displayed the confidence of someone who believed he held the winning cards. Eleanor sat beside Lady Beatrice, hands clasped in her lap with a calm that cost every ounce of strength she possessed. William positioned himself near the altar, formal uniform without decorations, but his very presence was an authority. Sir Hampton banged a wooden gavel. "This hearing is open. Lord Ashford, present your accusations." The Earl stood, swaying slightly. He read from a prepared paper with a voice that faltered. "My daughter Eleanor stole family jewels valued at £800. She falsified estate records. She maintained improper relationships. She fled to the protection of the Duke of Ravensworth for dishonourable reasons. Her behaviour has stained the Ashford family name." "Lord Silverton, as witness?" Silverton rose with a theatrical flourish. He spoke for 20 minutes. "Eleanor frequently disappeared without a chaperone. Inappropriate behaviour for a young single woman. Her father justifiably concerned. He insinuated, without openly stating, an improper relationship between Eleanor and William." When he finished, Sir Hampton turned to William. "Your Grace, the defence? I call my first witness, Mr. Edmund Price, butler of Ashford Hall." A 60-year-old man, his back bent from 3 decades of service, approached with a leather envelope. "Mr. Price, do you recognise this document?" "Yes, Your Grace. The original last will and testament of Lady Anne Ashford, dated 1810, 1 year before her passing." William opened the document, read aloud. "To my dear daughter Eleanor, these jewels with my eternal love. May they be used as she wishes, for her well-being and future happiness." He turned to Sir Hampton. "The jewels were legally Eleanor's. There was no theft. There was a legitimate inheritance." A murmur went through the chapel. "Mr. Price," William continued, "did you witness the deterioration of Ashford Hall after Lady Anne's death?" "Yes, Your Grace. The cottages began to crumble. Tenants starved. Miss Eleanor took on responsibilities that should have fallen to the Earl." "And did you witness verbal abuse?" Price lowered his eyes. "Frequently, Your Grace, especially when the Earl was drinking." Next witness, Mrs. Catherine Davies. Thomas's mother approached, nervous but determined. "Mrs. Davies, tell us about the winter of 1814. Thomas, my son, fell gravely ill. Pneumonia. The local doctor said there was no hope. Miss Eleanor brought a doctor from London, paid £15 she didn't have. She cared for Thomas day and night. He lived because of her. And this February? Pneumonia again. Miss Eleanor crossed a blizzard to save my son a second time. She worked for 7 hours without rest. Tears streamed down her face. She never asked for anything in return, Your Excellency." Witness after witness told a similar story. Mr. Robert Miller, family of 7, saved during typhoid fever in 1813. Mrs. Sarah Wright, a difficult childbirth. Eleanor brought an experienced midwife, saved the life of mother and baby. Mr. James Whitmore, apothecary from Derby, confirmed the pawn transactions. Eleanor always clear about her intention to redeem. William then presented documentation, the 3 ledgers, 127 individual receipts, 43 letters of thanks from tenants, Lady Anne's will. And then, with a voice that cut the air like a sharp blade, he confronted the Earl. "Lord Ashford, how much have you lost at the gaming tables in the last 5 years?" The Earl turned pale. That is not... Answer. How much? I haven't tallied it exactly. William produced documents from 4 London clubs. £12,000. You gambled away your daughter's future while she saved your tenants from starvation. He turned to Silverton. And you, Lord Silverton, loaned at 40% interest. That is not business, it is extortion. Silverton stood up, furious. Your Grace has no right... I have every right, William interrupted, his voice icy. This chapel is my property. This hearing happens under my authorization, and I will testify to Eleanor Ashford's character, not out of romantic sympathy, but from irrefutable evidence. He turned to Sir Hampton. Miss Ashford committed no crime. She demonstrated courage that shames many men who served with me at Waterloo. She managed an entire estate, saved lives, sacrificed her future for the forgotten. These are not the actions of a criminal, they are the actions of a secular saint. The silence in the chapel was absolute. Sir Hampton banged his gavel. Accusations entirely without merit. Miss Eleanor Ashford acted within her legal rights. Lord Ashford failed in his paternal duties. Lord Silverton, your testimony was defamatory and is on the record. Miss Ashford is declared free of any censure. He turned to Eleanor. Young lady, this court deeply regrets that you were subjected to such an unfounded accusation. Go with your honor restored. Eleanor maintained her composure until she left the chapel. Only when she reached the gardens with the first yellow daffodils nodding in the wind did she allow tears to fall. But they were tears of relief, not shame. William remained a respectful distance behind her, waiting. Eleanor did not sleep that night. She lay awake, watching the moon cross a starry sky through her suite window, her mind revisiting every moment of the trial, every word spoken. At 5:30 in the morning, as the first light touched the eastern horizon, she went down to the conservatory. The transformation was complete. Where once there was desolation, hellebores now bloomed in impossible colors. Pure whites, delicate pinks, deep greens with wine-colored spots. Snowdrops formed delicate constellations along the beds. Witch hazel perfumed the air with a sweetness that defied the last of winter's chill. Eleanor touched the petals with reverence, feeling life pulse under her fingers. Eleanor, she turned. William was at the conservatory door, a mahogany box in his hands and a sealed envelope. He approached slowly, as if afraid of startling a wild creature. I want you to see this. He opened the box. Inside, gleaming in the nascent light, were all of Lady Anne's jewels. The 3-strand pearl necklace, the sapphire brooch with diamonds, the pair of emerald earrings, and the ruby ring Eleanor remembered her mother wearing every day. All redeemed, William said softly. £850, including accumulated interest. Eleanor touched the pearls with slightly trembling fingers. William handed her the envelope. A deed. You are named the lifetime administrator of this conservatory, and a contract confirming an annual salary of £150 as an agricultural consultant. Your Grace, I cannot... Eleanor, he interrupted gently, using her first name for the first time. Yesterday, before that chapel, I realized something irrefutable. I cannot imagine managing Ravensworth without your wisdom. I cannot imagine facing my mornings without your presence. This isn't gratitude speaking, nor admiration, though both exist deeply. He paused, his grey eyes fixed on hers. It is love, simple, definitive, complete. Eleanor felt the world stop. I love your strength that doesn't need to proclaim itself, William continued, his voice carrying an emotion he didn't try to hide. I love your compassion that seeks no recognition. I love who I become when I work by your side. I love the hands that save lives and plant hope in frozen soil. He knelt, breaking all propriety and protocol. Eleanor Anne Ashford, I offer you a choice, 3 paths. He held up one finger. First, marriage. As the Duchess of Ravensworth, with full equality in all decisions of the estate. A partnership in every sense. A second finger. Second, an independent position. As an administrator with permanent residence. A salary of £150. Complete professional autonomy. We would work together, but you would maintain total independence. A third finger. Third, departure. With £1,000 and letters of recommendation for any position you desire, wherever you wish. With no judgment, no hard feelings. He lowered his hand. The choice is entirely yours, but know this. Whatever your decision, you have transformed my life. You taught me that true nobility comes not from title, but from character. That real strength doesn't shout, but blossoms quietly, even in the cruelest winter. Eleanor stood motionless for 2 minutes that felt like an eternity. She touched her mother's pearls. She looked at the hellebores blooming around her. She smelled the sweet scent of witch hazel. She heard the respectful silence of William, who did not press, did not rush. "For 5 years," she said finally, her voice soft but firm, "I made decisions for others, for the tenants, for the estate. This is the first decision I am making just for me." She knelt before him, their eyes on the same level, with no hierarchy. "I choose you, William, not for the security you offer, nor the position, but for the man who sees partnership where others see hierarchy, for the man who offers choice where others would impose destiny, for the man who worked beside me with dirt under his fingernails and never feared what his hands revealed about who he truly is." She touched the Waterloo scar with infinite tenderness. "Yes, I accept to marry you." William closed his eyes briefly, as if in a silent prayer of gratitude. Then he kissed her hand with a reverence that transcended romance. It was a promise, a vow, a recognition of souls who had found each other through the ice and chosen to create spring together. "I promise to be worthy of this choice every day of our lives," he whispered. Outside the conservatory, invisible but present, Lady Beatrice smiled as tears streamed down her aged face. Inside, among the hellebores and snowdrops, amid the fragrance of witch hazel and promises of a future spring, 2 wounded hearts began to heal, like earth finally receiving rain after a long drought. The 25th of March, 1816, dawned clear after weeks of intermittent rain. The sky over Ravensworth had that impossible blue that seems to exist only after storms, when the atmosphere is clean and the world seems newly created. Eleanor woke in the East Wing suite for the last time as an unmarried woman. Lady Beatrice and Margaret, who had arrived 3 days earlier with her husband Sir Thomas Bradford, awaited her with a wedding dress spread on the bed. Sky blue silk, not white, Eleanor had insisted, as white seemed too pretentious, with Honiton lace on the sleeves and a modest neckline, a gift from Lady Beatrice, sewn by the best modistes in Derby. "Mother would be so proud," Margaret whispered, fastening the pearls around Eleanor's neck. "You look like a queen, sister." "I look like myself," Eleanor corrected gently. "And that is enough." The Ravensworth chapel had been transformed. Spring flowers, daffodils, early tulips, branches of golden forsythia, filled porcelain vases, candles lit even in the daylight, created the atmosphere of a waking dream. 80 guests filled the pews. Tenants, Millbrook residents, local nobility, Mrs. Davies in the front row with Thomas, now healthy and rosy-cheeked. Mr. Thornton with his wife, both smiling. The Millers, the Wrights, all the families Eleanor had helped over the years. William waited at the altar with Lord Edmund Hartley, a friend from Waterloo, his best man, at his side. He wore a formal uniform without decorations, but he needed none. His very presence was honour enough. When Eleanor entered, escorted by Sir Thomas Bradford, as the Earl of Ashford had not received an invitation, though Eleanor had sent a respectful letter explaining, William's gaze met hers across the distance. And in that look, Eleanor saw future years. She saw mornings in the conservatory. She saw shared decisions. She saw children running through the gardens. She saw them growing old together, their hands always dirty with soil, their hearts always planting hope. Reverend Thomas Caldwell officiated with a voice that carried the weight of tradition. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God." But when it came to the vows, William added his own words. "I promise to honour you not just as my wife, but as my equal, to consult you in all decisions, to plant beside you every spring of our lives." Eleanor replied, "I promise to walk beside you, not behind or ahead, to bring my strength to our challenges, to bloom with you, even in the cruelest winters." The kiss was chaste but meaningful, a promise of future intimacy built on a solid foundation of respect. They signed the register with witnesses. Eleanor Anne Ashford Pembroke, Duchess of Ravensworth. When they left the chapel, something unexpected awaited. At the gate of the adjacent churchyard, alone and devastated, stood the Earl of Ashford. Eleanor stopped. William kept a protective hand on her back, but did not interfere. The Earl had aged 10 years in 3 months. His clothes were less cared for. His hands trembled visibly. His eyes red from crying or drink, or both. His posture was bent, that of someone carrying a weight he could no longer sustain. "Eleanor, Duchess," his voice broke. "I came to pay respects." The silence stretched painfully. "Your mother would be proud," he finally said. tears sliding shamelessly. I failed where she would have triumphed. I spent what she built. I destroyed what she valued. You are her daughter completely. Nothing of me. Eleanor felt something move in her chest. Not complete forgiveness. That would take years, perhaps never come entirely. But compassion. The same compassion that had made her save tenants, help sick children, sacrifice her future for strangers. Mother taught me compassion, Father, she said, her voice controlled but not cruel. Therefore I wish you peace. I wish you find in yourself the man you could have been, the Earl sobbed. I deserve neither your compassion nor your peace. Perhaps not, Eleanor agreed with gentle honesty, but I offer them nonetheless, because carrying hatred is like carrying stones. It hurts the carrier more than the path. William spoke then, addressing the Earl for the first time since the trial. Ashford, there is treatment available for men struggling with certain compulsions. My physician in London specializes in cases of— Thank you, Ravensworth, the Earl interrupted, his voice strangled. For everything, for saving her from me. He turned, leaving in a simple carriage, not the Ashford family coach. Later, Lady Beatrice would tell Eleanor, the Earl had sold Ashford Hall to pay his debts. He had moved to a modest cottage in Hampshire. Silverton, investigated for usurious practices, had fled to the continent. Margarethe had offered her father residence in the north. He had refused out of pride. But on that day, her wedding day, Eleanor thought no more of her father. She thought of the future. They returned to Ravensworth Manor under a golden afternoon, greeted by a formation of 40 servants and tenants. A floral arch decorated the gate. White roses and spring foliage, woven by hands Eleanor recognized. Children threw petals, laughing. Mrs. Davies approached with bread and salt on a silver tray. An old tradition, Your Grace. Bread so you may never know hunger. Salt to remember that life has flavor both sweet and bitter, and both are necessary. Eleanor and William shared the bread, tasted the salt together. Mr. Thornton had planted a new rose bush in the conservatory, a special hybrid he himself had developed over 3 years, with pale pink flowers and a golden yellow center. I've named it the Eleanor Rose, he announced with shy pride. It withstands the cold, blooms in winter, and spreads a scent that improves with time. Seemed fitting. In the conservatory at twilight, with candles lit and daffodils in full bloom, 200 yellow and white bulbs, the fulfilled promise of spring, William brought 2 glasses of port wine. I thought of building a larger conservatory at our London house, he commented, looking around the space they had transformed together. I prefer this one, Eleanor replied, touching the restored glass. It has history, our history, of broken glass and almost lost hope, of life blooming against all odds. Then we will continue creating life together, William said. Here, in London, wherever we are. He spread maps on the workbench. I wanted to show you future projects. A school for the tenants' children, a medical clinic in the village. I thought you could supervise the clinic, Eleanor completed, her eyes shining, and a circulating library, an apprenticeship program for the youth, opportunities. They worked side by side over maps and drawings late into the night, planning the future they would build together, brick by brick, decision by decision. Eventually, exhaustion overcame them. They fell asleep in the library, Eleanor with her head on William's shoulder, their hands clasped even in sleep, surrounded by books and dreams and infinite possibilities. The Ravensworth servants, upon finding them the next morning, merely smiled and covered the couple with a woolen blanket, letting them sleep. Outside, spring settled over Derbyshire with firmness. Buds emerged from the once frozen soil. Birds returned with songs. Streams ran free, no longer imprisoned by ice. And in the Ravensworth Conservatory, hellebores bloomed in glory, living proof that even in the cruelest winter, with patience and care and love, life finds a way. 5 years slid by like water, smooth at times, turbulent at others, but always flowing forward. April 1821 found Eleanor in the conservatory, now famous throughout Derbyshire. Visitors came from London to witness the winter cultivation she had perfected. Gardeners requested her advice. Botanists from Kew Gardens corresponded with her regularly. She did not sign her letters as Duchess. She signed as E.A. Pembroke, preserving the modesty that defined her. But there was a greater secret. William found her at dawn, a ritual they never abandoned, even with 3 small children sleeping in the nursery. Anne, aged 3, Thomas, 2, and George, 6 months. It arrived today, he said, handing her a package wrapped in brown paper, from London. The publisher we consulted. Eleanor opened it with hands that trembled slightly. Inside, bound in dark green leather with gold lettering, a treatise on winter cultivation and the compassionate administration of estates, by E.A. Pembroke. She opened to the dedication. To Lady Anne Ashford, who taught me that true nobility blossoms in the care for the forgotten. To William, who saw strength where others saw weakness. To all administrators who choose compassion over profit. And to the hellebores, which taught me that the most enduring beauty is that which blooms when no one is watching. It will be controversial, William commented, reading over her shoulder. You argue that tenants thrive when treated with dignity, that estates yield more when servants are paid fairly, that sustainable profit comes from investing in people, not exploiting them. Good, Eleanor replied calmly. Truths that threaten an unjust system deserve to be controversial. The book spread slowly but surely. Some landowners ridiculed it. Others, however, especially Waterloo veterans who had returned, changed, who had seen brotherhood on the battlefields and could no longer ignore inequalities at home, adopted its principles. At Ravensworth, Eleanor's legacy was visibly manifest. The school operated with 30 children, all literate. The medical clinic served families in a 10-mile radius. Wages were fair, cottages well maintained, harvests divided equitably. And surprisingly, Ravensworth prospered financially. Healthy and educated tenants worked better. Turnover was non-existent. The estate's reputation attracted the best artisans and merchants. See, William showed her the accounting books. Compassion is not just morally right, it is economically smart. You've proven it with numbers that even the greatest skeptics cannot refute. One afternoon they found little Thomas, their eldest son, named in honor of Thomas Davies, whom Eleanor had saved twice, in the conservatory. The 2-year-old child was kneeling in the dirt, digging with his still clumsy little hands. What are you doing, my love? Eleanor asked. Planting, Thomas replied seriously. Like Mama. So flowers grow in winter and are happy. William and Eleanor exchanged a look of pure contentment. News eventually arrived about the Earl of Ashford, 3 years sober, living modestly in Hampshire, reconciled with Margarethe, who visited him regularly. He sent a letter asking permission to meet his grandchildren. Eleanor granted it with one condition. Come as a grandfather, not an earl. As a man, not a title. In this house, character matters more than position. The Earl accepted. The first visit was tense, but with time old wounds began to scar over. Not completely, the scars would always remain, but the sharp pain softened into melancholy acceptance. You became what your mother always knew you would be, he said one night, holding a sleeping Anne in his arms. What I prevented from blooming for so long. Forgive me if you can. I am working on it, Father, Eleanor replied honestly. Forgiveness is a garden that takes time to grow, but I am planting the seeds. The spring of 1822 arrived with an explosion of colour. The Ravensworth gardens looked like an impressionist painting, tulips in red, yellow, purple, daffodils swaying golden in the wind, cherry trees scattering petals like scented snow. Eleanor, now 29, remained in the conservatory at dawn, a 7-year ritual begun when she was a frightened guest, now a confident duchess who still preferred dirt under her nails to jewels on her fingers. Mr. Thornton's Eleanor roses had spread, 40 bushes now, each blooming in winter, each named in honor of someone Eleanor had helped. Miller's rose, Davies' rose, Wright's rose. You are creating a living legacy, William said, appearing with the morning tea as he always did. Years from now, people will walk here and see not just flowers but names, stories, lives you touched. Eleanor accepted the cup, her fingers brushing his as they had for 7 years. It is not my legacy. It is Mother's. She planted the idea that caring for others is not weakness. I merely watered the seed. Little Anne ran in, her white dress stained with grass, holding a clumsy bouquet of daisies. For Mama, she announced, offering the flowers with 3-year-old seriousness. Because you are pretty and strong and save people. Thomas followed, carrying George, who babbled happily on his brother's shoulder. George wants to see the hellebores, Thomas declared. He said they are winter flowers that aren't afraid. William took George, Eleanor held Anne's and Thomas's hands, and together they walked through the conservatory they had restored together 7 years before. Do you know what I've realized? Eleanor said, stopping before the first planting of hellebores now mature and spreading in a carpet of white and pink. Hellebores bloom in winter, not because they are especially strong, but because they don't know they are supposed to give up. They grow because growing is what they do. They bloom because blooming is their nature. Like you, William said softly. Like all of us, when allowed, Eleanor corrected. When we are given proper soil, enough water, sun when needed, and space to develop roots. They sat on a wooden bench that William had built in their first year of marriage. The children played nearby, their laughter echoing under the glass roof like music. I received a letter today, Eleanor commented, from a young woman in Yorkshire. She read my treatise. She asks if she can come study estate management here, says her father refuses to teach her, that she should focus on finding a husband. And you replied? I said she is welcome, that we will have an apprenticeship program starting in the autumn, for women and men equally, because wisdom has no gender, only will. William kissed her hair. You are changing the world, my love. One woman, one estate, one treatise at a time. I'm not changing the world, Eleanor protested. I am just planting, and hoping others will water what I've planted. Future years would prove her modesty wrong. A treatise on winter cultivation and compassionate administration became a foundational text for progressive estate management. Universities would eventually include it in curricula. Social reformers would cite its principles in arguments for fairer labor laws. The Ravensworth Apprenticeship Program would train 37 female administrators over the next 20 years. Many would transform estates in their own counties, spreading the model of compassion and efficiency. Eleanor and Margaret would establish an informal support network for women in difficulty, a discreet refuge, professional training, letters of recommendation. They would save dozens of young women from forced marriages or abusive situations. The Earl of Ashford would live to 82, sober for his last 15 years, reconciled with his family, dedicating his final time to writing letters of apology to the tenants he had neglected. He would die in peace in 1837, surrounded by daughters and grandchildren, who forgave him not completely but sufficiently. But on that spring morning in 1822, Eleanor did not know of the distant future. She only knew that the sun was warming her face, that children were laughing nearby, that William was by her side, as he always was, as he always would be, that hellebores bloomed even out of season, defying expectations, that her hands, calloused, strong, marked by work, had planted more than flowers. They had planted hope, and hope, Eleanor had learned, was the most resilient crop of all. It survived winters, it bloomed against the odds, it spread through generations. Do you know what I want them to say about me when I'm gone? Eleanor murmured. What? Not that I was a duchess, not that I wrote books, but that my hands planted life where others saw only barren earth, that I made a difference not through grand gestures, but through small choices repeated day after day, that I loved well. William interlaced his fingers with hers, both their hands equally marked now by 7 years of working side by side. They will say all that and more. They will say you taught that true nobility comes not from blood or title, but from how we treat the most vulnerable. That strength doesn't shout, but blossoms silently, like hellebores in winter. As long as they say I was happy, Eleanor whispered. That is enough. Were you? I am, she corrected, turning to kiss him. I am immensely, deeply, completely happy. 20 years later, when society commented on that unusual duchess who insists on getting her hands dirty with soil, the tenants and those she had touched would reply, she is not unusual, she is extraordinary, and her hands, her hands built what titles never could, a world where dignity is not a privilege but a right, where compassion is not weakness but the ultimate strength, where even in the cruelest winter there is always the possibility of flowers, and in the Ravensworth Conservatory through generations the hellebores continued to bloom, an eternal testament that love, when planted with patience and watered with respect, knows no season. It blooms always, especially when no one expects it, especially when it is needed most, especially when hands that work the earth choose to plant hope instead of reaping despair. Eleanor Ashford Pembroke, Duchess of Ravensworth, taught this not through sermons, but through a life lived with open hands and a willing heart. And that, after all, is the only legacy that matters.